Alright, everybody, welcome to another developer interview here on Game Wisdom, where we examine the art and science of games. I am Josh Placer, and my guest tonight is the developer behind games such as Egg Trainer, Candy Raid the Factory, and he works as a sole developer at KR Game Studios. So, please welcome to the cast, Kayne Ruse. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me. I've been looking forward to this for days.
I know we've been having this chat for a while now. I know you had some internet issues and all schedules got messed
Oh
up and
yeah,
all that.
but finally here, so everything's good.
All right. So we certainly have a lot to discuss tonight. Besides talking about your games, we'll also be having a little talk about meta game design and meta progression and what that means for game design and especially for live service stuff. But to get the ball rolling, since this is your first time doing a live cast, could you talk a little bit about who you are and what your background is when it comes to game dev?
Okay. Well, I'm Kayne Ruse. I've been making games basically since I was a kid, and I incorporated into KR Game Studios about 4 years ago. That's when I consider my professional career to have started. Um, since then, I've made a few games, and well, more than a few games actually, um, such as Candy Raid and Egg Trainer. I've partnered with a number of other people to actually produce the art and the music for various different games, as well as play testing. So that's my history in a nutshell.
Hmm. Yep, and we've been chatting for feels like a few years now. It's hard to tell
Yeah,
time
definitely.
wise. Let's see. Chris and Chad want to know, where are you located?
I'm from Australia, south of Sydney. Um, yeah, it's been my uh, home sweet home, basically, my whole life.
And it also means we have a very fun time zone difference. I think it's what, like 5 o'clock in the morning for you right now.
Yeah, something like that. Just past
I
5.
The funny thing is, I've got a lot of developers I've been recently talking to out of Australia, so it's good we get some practice now because I know time zones for casts are going to be very fun, I guess, to say the least, to get everyone organized.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Sorry.
I was just going to say, so as you say, you worked on Candy Ray the Factory, you've been doing Egg Trainer. Do you have any other projects you're currently working on?
Yeah. Well, I've got a few complete ones. I've got Potion School, which is actually a tabletop card game. I've also got Themes, Foils, and Fallen, which is a tabletop skirmish war game. And I've worked on a number of smaller games, such as Waterlogged, which is a small little game jam. Um, I spent a month on a game called Kingdom Battles, which was basically the precursor for Egg Trainer, and another game which shall not be named here because it was just a disaster.
And for people watching this live or recorded, there are links to all of Kane's games in the description down below.
Yeah, thanks.
And hello, Vale. Thanks for stopping by. Oh, yeah, sure, I can raise him up a little bit more too. Let me know if this is good for chat. I just raised his gain up on my side. But
Sorry about that.
not a problem. I think that should be good, but we'll see. Yeah, so with the kind of games that you like to make, I guess, do you have a style? Do you have an approach, or something for the types of
Um,
game design?
well, in general, I jump between different genres all the time. PBGs, card games, board games, all these different video games genres. They all share the same sort of approach. I try to make things as simple as I can, simple and approachable, but also as deep as I possibly can.
Hmm.
Yeah, just as a general philosophy.
So with let's start a little bit with Candy Ray, and then we'll move into Egg Trainer. I know we played this one. This was feels like about like 2 years ago. I want to say maybe a little bit more than that.
Yeah, it's about 4 years old now, but
Mm-hmm.
I'd say you probably played it about 2 years ago.
Mm-hmm. Let's see.
That's cool.
Okay, and maybe just raise your volume up just like a smidge. Maybe that will get things equalized. It's always hard to tell with volume levels.
Yeah, I can't do much adjusting on this end. Sorry.
Okay, that's fine. And I can, of course, raise you up using the magic of editing for the recorded version.
Cool.
So, my question for you regarding Egg Trainer, I know when we play again, like this was designed to be a very like short form game. Like this wasn't going to be like a 5 to 10 hour long design. Do you prefer, I guess, like working on like shorter games, or have you done anything like as like on a larger scale yet?
You mean Candy Raid?
Yeah, Candy Ray. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no worries. Um, well, Egg Trainer itself is a very long game. I really like with the genres. It varies depending on basically what strikes my fancy. In general, I've just done what I felt like doing at the time, and if it seems to work, then I just go with it.
Hmm. And with Egg Trainer itself, this is also a browser-based game. I know we had a discussion about your interest in browser-based games, and this was like about, I think, a year ago. Like we were talking about maybe doing a topic more on that one. So, what are your thoughts on browser-based design? Because it is something that has kind of declined, I think, with the rise of live service and mobile games.
Hmm. Well, with browser-based games, you basically need to be designing for the web. In particular, this game is what's called a persistent browser-based game, which has its own little niche but hardcore fans. Um, so it's not exactly built in like Flash or Unity or anything. It's really built into the website itself. So it's got a front end, it's got a back end servers,
Hmm.
which all use web technology. So it's a very different set of technologies and some different skills. But in general,
Hmm.
you have to approach it a little differently.
Yep. I'm sure one thing that is constantly like on your mind is just limitations of the browsers themselves. Obviously, you're not working with gaming PCs or even just anything in terms of having power along those lines. I guess as someone, I've played a few browser-based games, but it's not something that I've really done a whole lot in. How does the limitation of the browser factor into designing the game?
Well, the browser technology itself, it's not constantly connected. It can be, but it's not generally. Um, so you have to have like a request which is sent from the front to the back end, and then from the back end to the front end, and it's very. Oh, how do I describe it? Sorry, I'm blanking. Um, it's very slower paced, if that makes sense.
Hmm.
So you have to be aware that you're not gonna be building an FPS in the browser. You can using some technology, but in general, you're not going to be doing that for persistent browser-based games.
Hmm. Let's see. A question from Obi Newbie. Hopefully, I didn't butcher that too badly. How do you keep motivation while building your games?
Um, well, I usually build them in sprints. I spend a lot of time. Well, I spend a lot of effort in a very short amount of time for short games, and for longer ones, I need to take breaks for longer for some period, usually a couple weeks. Recently, I had a break for about 3 months, which was partly due to technical issues, and of course, that was after actually a pretty intense stint of development.
Hmm.
Sorry, everyone, my speech isn't the best.
That's all right. And with Kayne Ruse, I know you got. I remember. I think you got like an award or something for that game. I guess for people watching, what was the award, and was it something that you applied to, or did like they reach out to you for it?
Well, I applied to is this the funding?
Yeah,
Was that it?
I
Yeah,
think
yeah.
so.
I applied to this small competition, and basically it came in as a runner up, and I won about half a grand of marketing funding. Um, it took a little while to come through, but yeah, it went towards marketing on Facebook and Twitter, and that pulled a little bit of attention towards it.
Hmm.
So it was good getting a little recognition like that.
Yeah, I was just curious about like I guess what are your approaches to marketing? Because this is something that again, every developer has their own thoughts and especially their own strategies to their games.
Twitter, Facebook, Reddit, just with my personal accounts. I don't, apart from what I earned from earn in that competition, I've never really had a marketing budget.
Mm-hmm.
So really, it's word of mouth. I've been relying on word of mouth and me trying to hype it up through my own channels.
Mm-hmm. I know you put Candy Raid on Switch, and how was that as a developer? I'm just curious, like going from being PC to Switch.
That was awesome. Before we actually ported it, we updated the menu system because it lacked a decent menu at first, and then we moved it. We moved it onto the Switch with Nintendo's tools, and it just worked like a breeze. There are a few things we would have changed if we had designed it directly for the Switch from the beginning. Mainly the controls. Say the exactly how you switch elements and such. We probably would have changed that a little bit, but we kept it faithful to the original. It was decided.
Mm-hmm. A question from Chris. What is your home and or family like, and do you have a workday / routine?
Oh, that's a hard one. My home life, because housing is very hard to find. I live with my family. I look after my mum. My brother looks after the both of us. And basically we just look after each other. And as for workday, I find it very hard to actually sit down and start something, like start working.
Mm-hmm.
So it might be like 2 or 3 days before I can actually start working on something. And sometimes I might get shiny object syndrome for a project and jump over to some new idea. In general, I don't really have a consistent routine at all. It's really bad, actually.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's definitely a challenge when it comes to getting that motivation, especially when you're doing stuff like very like long term. Like you're like even for me with like the library talks and the book writing, like sometimes you just gotta like tie yourself to the chair and try to get something moving forward.
I have tried to put myself into a weekly cycle where I would push an update to Egg Trainer and post a news article about what I've done, because you can see news articles on the front page. And I mainly focus on a weekly or 2 weekly cycle.
Right. Yes, I've heard that, Chris. Yeah, and with like some of your projects, I know as you said with Egg Trainer, like that is your current one that you're focusing on. How is in terms of like I guess progress? Like, is that one available for like public play? Is it still in beta? Like, where is it at?
It's still officially in beta. Everything works except for the battles between creatures. I'm still working on that, and currently I'm rewriting the back end to simplify some of it to make development faster.
All right. And to Chris's question there, that is a Rat's Tail from the Discord.
Yeah, Rat's Tail 91. That's me.
So, I guess let's talk a little bit more about Egg Trainer. For people who haven't caught or who haven't checked out the site yet, what's the kind of, I guess, the elevator pitch for it?
Basically, I enjoyed a certain monster collecting game made by a certain massive Japanese company, and I wanted to distill the best parts of it down into what I enjoyed the most about it. So, sorry for being so obtuse. Basically, it's the best parts of Pokemon.
Yeah, man, I have a few of the images of characters, of course, for our thumbnail tonight. And for this one, I know one of the things that you were discussing is kind of the monetization for it. And that's always a challenge, especially for a browser-based game. So what's kind of been your approach in terms of course, building that around the gameplay?
Monetization is... I've always had a philosophy that monetization should enable more gameplay rather than more powerful gameplay, if that makes sense. By applying that to Egg Trainer, I can enable more simultaneous battles by opening up extra quote-unquote boxes for people to put their creatures into to battle with. And I also do have a little bit of something which is sort of borderline pay to win that I want to balance very carefully, which is an apple, which is essentially a second potion that you can use. But potions won't be super strong. It'll still be a risk to use it. So it's going to be a lot of balancing there. Yeah. In general, I sell gold coins, and then you buy boxes and golden apples with those coins.
And
that's roughly how it's structured. Yeah.
Okay.
Oh,
I was going to say, and Chris asked another question. Why make this as a browser game versus doing it as a standalone or a Steam Switch release?
Well, I've actually made another browser game before this called Kingdom Battles. I worked on it for about a month, got a surprising amount of attention for it, and really I enjoyed the experience, even though the final code base was an absolute mess. I enjoyed the experience. I really clicked with the community. Basically, it's just a scene that I wanted to get back into. So I decided, let's make something as accessible as possible, and make it aimed at this small community, but also aimed at a slightly wider audience. So people who like the Pokemon formula.
Let's see. So, to get back to the monetization with like having the apples, as you said, a big point about Egg Trainer or about the monetization is that you want to enable the gameplay. And this was something that I was saying about a lot with the next book that I wrote about free-to-play design, is that always it's that balance between, I need to earn money off of this stuff, so the purchases have to be worthwhile. But I don't want to make something that is inherently addictive or abusive to consumers. So, I guess if you look at a little bit more detail, like, what does the purchase of the apples, I guess, facilitate for the game?
Well, I'm going to restrict each item that you can use in a battle to just once in that battle. A simpler way of... it'll be simpler than held items, but... So you can only use one potion in a battle. You can only use one fossil egg in a battle, and so forth. In the same way, I'm going to have one golden apple in a battle, which will consume it. And it will basically be a copy of the potion. So you essentially get 2 heals in a game. But using it will consume a turn for that creature. I almost said for that Pokemon.
So oh, don't worry, the YouTube algorithm has already picked that up. It's already sent that over to Nintendo.
Oh dear. Yeah, I know I agonized over this for actually quite a while. I decided to go with it and to try and thread the needle, basically, of making it fair, but also making it worthwhile, profitable. Profitable.
Mm-hmm. I guess from a balance standpoint, like one that popped in my head, I'm sure there's something that you've thought about as well. That if the purchase of the apples is basically as a second potion, so it basically gives you a second heal, that it does sound like it could create a slight pay-to-win scenario of having somebody going up against someone without apples versus someone who does. And I'm sure there's something that you've thought about, so I'm just curious, like, what are your thoughts?
Yeah. I think because I want apples to be an exact copy of potions, I'm going to have to balance them both at the same time, so they're both going to heal the same, and if apples are too powerful, I'm going to have to nerf them both to the point where they're a bit weaker or a bit stronger. It's very up in the air right now because I don't have the battles working yet, and I can't test it in a practical sense yet. Only mathematical.
All right.
And so, unfortunately, I don't have a better answer. Sorry.
No problem. And that is always the challenge of these games. I mean, I've been playing several mobile games and, gacha-based games for the last few months, and it's that issue of how much does skill trump spending? Because if the spending is so good, and you can just beat someone who has more skill than you, then, obviously it's good for the person who spends money, bad for the person who's trying to play the game.
Oh, there's definitely going to be skill in like when you use the apple, as well as when you use the potion or other items that I make available. I think in general, skill is going to be the defining factor, as well as a touch of randomness. Because you always need a little bit of randomness.
In terms of the eggs themselves, I don't know if we said this point yet, but just to clarify for people watching, do you get new characters? Is it like based off of a gacha system, or is it deterministic? As in, this egg will drop this specific type, this egg will drop this specific type.
At the moment, each egg of each rarity will drop a specific creature. I've thought about putting multiple creatures in the same egg, but I probably won't do that in future.
Yeah, it's a allure and nightmare of gacha right there.
Yeah. I don't like gacha, to be honest, at all. So I'm going to avoid that.
You're not going to put any like legendary gems from Diablo Immortal in Egg Trainer?
Oh no, nothing like that. Not that evil yet.
Not yet, of course. Chris asked in chat, what is your favorite Pokemon game, Pokemon type, and specific Pokemon? It's a Poke trifecta question.
Favorite game would be Generation 6 Oris, so Omega Ruby Alpha Sapphire. Pokemon type would have to be Fairy, just because it's so out of there. And specific Pokemon would have to be the Dratini line. So Dratini, Dragonair, Dragonite.
And unfortunately for me, like I said, like the Pokemon games just never hooked me. Maybe I was just at that weird age where I was like just right out of like the age bracket for Pokemon back in the day.
I've got a friend who was just out of it growing up, but I've actually gotten him into Pokemon cards, so into the card game. Might want to check that out. Who knows?
Yeah. And for me, I think I'm more of a Shin Megami Tensei fan. Like, I can't have Pokemon unless I'm killing demons or ruining the world at the same time. I guess to kind of get back to the comparison between like Egg Trainer and some of the Pokemon elements, are there any other like systems or mechanisms from Pokemon that you really wanted to include in Egg Trainer?
Yes, actually, there are genetics. Each creature is unique in that it has its own set of genetics. So there's health, speed, strength, and power. And those are combined with trained stats. So health, speed, attack, defense, magical attack, magical defense, things like that. Or I think it was physical attack and physical defense. And then there were species-specific stats that boosted that as well. And there's also so breeding stats like that, sorry. And you can select moves and such. Yeah.
Okay. So here's a question then. With all the Pokemon that you've played, I'm sure you've done a lot of study or a lot of analysis on it. Are there any aspects that you are doing differently from Pokemon? You know, specifically maybe because it's something that you didn't like or something you want to try and improve on?
Something I didn't like. Well, me, diehard fan, there's so much that I do like. That's a tricky one. Basically the inaccessibility. I wanted to make things easy for people to actually get into it. I added an item called a magnifying glass. It's literally a magnifying glass, which enables you to see the stats of the internal stats of the creatures. That's something that wasn't really available in Pokemon. You just sort of kind of had to keep track of it yourself. And things like dual typing and complex move limits, like power points, I think they were called. Things like that. They just raised the difficulty of accessibility for Pokemon. So I didn't include those or anything. Because I think there's like 18 types in the Pokemon video games, which is too much, I think. So I've lowered it to 10.
Here's a random question for you, and as well as for chat. It's something I always think about when we have discussions about Pokemon or creature collectors or things like that. Have you ever played the game Creatures? This was like a 90s kind of PC game.
I can't say I have, sorry.
There's a series called Creatures that was like, it was all about raising various creatures. They had like their own genetics, there was breeding involved. It had a lot to do with like AI behavior because you would like teach them and raise them. It's kind of like a pseudo Black and White, if you remember that from Lionhead Studios, Pierre Molyneux. And
okay,
the reason why I bring this up is I always like wonder about like where people could go with the whole, I guess, like creature collector, creature breeding, that kind of gameplay loop.
Where you could go with it.
Yeah, I guess like if there's more, or if anyone's done anything more beyond just creature raising, creature battling, that kind of thing. Because we've, again, like Black and White attempted that, but I'm not sure if it was due to design limitations or technology limitations that it never really, I think, blew up more than just teach this guy to shoot a fireball. He shot a fireball, and that was like the extent that you could do.
Okay. Well, I think Digimon did make some inroads into innovating, I think. Um, it is very different from Pokemon in that it focuses on just a single creature that evolves between stages and then reincarnates into an egg and then just starts again. Um, it's still got battling and stuff, obviously, but it's got a lot of like mini games and stuff in it on occasion in some Tamagotchis.
All right. Just looking at chat.
So apart from that, I can't really think of anything. Sorry.
And I guess as another question for Egg Trainer, just to clarify for people watching us right now, in terms of the gameplay loop itself, is it just the battle and the collecting, or are there other systems, or do you have other systems planned?
In Egg Trainer, it is mostly a feedback loop of buying eggs, hatching them, raising them, breeding them, and then selling or hatching the eggs. That result. And you sell the eggs to gain enough gold, not gold, sorry, silver, to collect, to buy rarer eggs. At least right now, yeah. I've thought about putting in like some mini game, like a stock market or something, where you place stocks on different eggs popularities. That's a post-release idea, so definitely in the future.
A lot of developers love stock markets, it seems, these days for subsystems.
Oh yeah.
Let's see, I'm just looking at the chat. I think I played Monster Loves You like one time, and that was it. I didn't really get too far into it. Did you ever try that?
It rings a bell, but it rings a bell, but I've never played it, I'm afraid.
So here's another, I'm sure, question that's kept you up at night in terms of thinking about Egg Trainer, and that is balancing the different characters. So I guess how many characters do you have in the game currently?
I have 40, including the secret one.
Which
you actually put right in the middle of the thumbnail. But don't worry, it's alright.
I guess how many are you aiming for, like, total? Are you going to add more in as development?
There are no plans for any more. It was very hard, actually, getting the art for what's there, because I had to work with a number of different artists over time. But I would like to eventually expand it once the game is complete. Maybe have some sort of magical flute that summons a random egg, with a rare creature in it. I don't know. Just a random idea.
Okay.
And no.
I do want to talk a little more about the balance or your thoughts on it, but question from Newbie. I'm sorry if I'm butchering that name a little bit. Ubi Newbie, there you go. Okay. How do you go about finding people to do the art for Egg Trainer?
Well, I contact some people that I already know. I also put out a call for rev share if anyone's interested. I try to pay where I can. But in general, I just commission someone who I know is willing to work. In general, I feel really bad about not actually being able to pay as much as I think the art is worth. Because my motto is making games on a shoestring budget. But yeah, for one of my better artists, they were actually originally a fan artist. So one of my friends gave me the images, the line art for the eggs, and then as a present, and then she colored in the actual eggs to make the fantastic coloring. And I was so impressed, I brought her on, and she was willing to work for me, basically for peanuts. And I still feel bad about it, but I will pay them back one day. Yeah, bit of a sore spot.
To go back to like the balance side of things, like what has been your approach to balance? You say you have 40 characters in the game, so what has been, I guess, what you've done in terms of balancing them out? What has been like your overall philosophy when it comes to character balance?
Um, in general, the rarer ones are slightly more powerful. I've given each one a quota between say 80 and 90 for commons, 90 and 100 for uncommons, and so forth. Um, and I sort of position and I sort of distribute those values in into each of the species stats,
Mm-hmm.
and as they get rarer, they have a higher value, as I said. But I also made a point of balancing some of the more common ones to be slightly effective against some of the rarer ones, to just to keep that bit of balance in there. So although the rarer ones are stronger overall, they might have an Achilles heel here or there, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Also, specific movesets can be used for can be used for balancing things. So maybe metal is too strong. So I might give whatever metal is weak against an advantage in its movesets.
And I guess,
and not every creature has a stab move, for instance. Sorry.
I was just about to ask, like, are the skills? I'm assuming the skills are mostly like universal, or do certain characters have like exclusive skills?
There are some, like, each one has a pool of techniques. There are some techniques. Sorry, the moves are actually called techniques. I forgot to mention that. I just remembered. Some of the techniques are exclusive to specific creatures. But most of the creatures have a pool of between 3 and 7 or 8 techniques that are actually available.
Okay. And in terms of the techniques themselves, I guess, I'm assuming that the techniques, I know in Pokemon, techniques are also, I think, usually tied to specific elements. Is that right?
Yes. Each technique has a specific element.
Okay.
So there is same type attack bonus, which is borrowed from Pokemon directly, for some of the creature and technique matchups.
All right. I'm trying to think anything else from a design point of view about Egg Trainer that we didn't discuss yet.
The techniques themselves don't actually have power yet. They don't have like a damaging value, so I'm gonna put that in then when I get to it, basically.
Mm-hmm. And
from a design perspective, like I could go on technical stuff for hours, but no design stuff I can think of right now.
All right. I guess another question regarding the monetization. Are there, besides the apples themselves, are there any other aspects or things you're considering in terms of monetization for the game?
Not particularly. Not that I can really think of. Like I wanted say a potion analog, so that's the apple. I wanted extra battles, so that's the battle boxes, which the sprite of which is a literal cardboard box, which I think is hilarious. No, those are currently the only two things you can buy. So, because they're also fairly cheap gold-wise, I actually haven't enabled like the most expensive purchase option, because I don't think that's fair for anyone.
Mm-hmm. I know, like, it's like one always popular thing, especially for any kind of like gacha or hero collector style game, is cosmetics and stuff like that. But I'm sure, again, that's also more art that you have to worry about with a game like this.
Yeah, I have thought about doing quote unquote developer art cosmetic, just as a placeholder to get all the code ready for other cosmetics, which would literally just be me scribbling it in MS Paint, basically. And then, yeah, it sounds silly, but there wouldn't be they'd obviously be just cosmetic. But I find in some games things like that tend to be liked, so even popular sometimes.
And I guess as another bit of design question, then, as regarding the number of characters and number of creatures in the game, have you given any thought to expanding it? Like, if depending upon fan response or fan reception to Egg Trainer.
Response. But if people really clamor for more, then yes, because people do actually enjoy catching them all. I know my artist is actually breeding them to be perfect, which is really impressive. So yeah, I might add. Yeah, I'm always open to adding more in the future if I can afford the art. That's the big killer problem.
Always is, as we've concerningly discussed.
They wouldn't be available directly from the shop like the base 40 though. There'd be some hidden mechanic that people would have to like share and collaborate to unlock. I want to encourage some sort of community,
Actually, that brings up another question. I don't know if we actually elaborate on this point, but how do you actually get eggs, and how you actually breed the creatures in Egg Trainer?
Well, you start off the game with 500 silver, just a fresh account. And you go to the shop. The only thing you can really buy is the common eggs. So you buy 2 common eggs for 200 silver each, and you have an incubator just for free, just in your inventory. And you use that to hatch the eggs. Which egg is available changes every day. So you will get something different depending on when you start. And once you've hatched them, you just go into their inspection screen, and there's just a button that says set to breed or breed them. And then it's mostly egg seller now, yes. And once every 8 hours or so, they'll lay an egg whenever they see fit, basically.
Okay. And to Chris's question, what is the game's art style?
It doesn't really have a consistent aesthetic. Because obviously I've used multiple artists over the 2.5 years that I've been working on it. So it can vary from very high quality to very high quality cartoon art to low. Well, I wouldn't say low, but mid-tier quality.
And
okay. I would like a pixelated cosmetic eventually.
And that's another point I'm not sure we clarified on this one as well. In terms of the battles, are you in complete control over creatures, or do the creatures automatically attack or use their skills, based on what you give them?
Oh no, you tell them which techniques to use each turn, and then each turn, once you use a technique, that technique is disabled for the next turn. That's at least something original.
Okay. And how many creatures do you... Okay.
Sorry, I just thought of something. Some of the creatures actually have their own gimmicks, such as the Season Long, which is this beautiful dragon thing. The illustration for it actually changes every month. So one month it might be blooming into this beautiful flowery thing. The next month it might be summer. The next month autumn. Next month winter. I don't exactly follow the real world months because why not? There's also the hidden one, the Kaku, which is a bit tricky to find. I actually had to put it into the wiki for people how to actually find it. So there are some with gimmicks like that.
And how many do you take into like an individual battle?
I think I'm gonna make it 6. I think I've made it 6. Yeah.
All right. Do you see like adding anything like a tournament mode or like competitions you can have against people?
I definitely want that. I'd like a proper ladder, so an ELO rating ladder, something like that. So either the players will have an ELO rating, or the individual boxes will have ELO rating because you have to lock the boxes to battle with them. And using the same team will push them up their own ladder. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It sounds good, especially having like matchmaking, a low rating, that kind of thing.
Yeah, and to make it fair to everyone, the ladders will probably reset every month.
Mm-hmm.
But none of this is coded yet, but it's planned.
All right. And speaking about plan, as we were talking about earlier regarding Steam, Switch, and browser base, have you given any thought to porting it or bringing it to like a dedicated platform in the future?
No, it can run on phones through the phone browser.
Mm-hmm.
Runs on my dinky little Android. And I make it a very specific point to make it reactive, which is just the technical term for it works on desktop and phone browser. It sort of works on tablet as well. In general, anything with a browser is my targets. I don't think it could really work as a dedicated app.
Okay.
At least if it is, I'm not really interested in doing that.
All right. As a quick time check, we're about 47 minutes in, so I figure let's talk a little bit more about meta design or metaplay, and this will probably be where we, I guess like this will be like the bulk of our discussion. Oh, are you still there?
Yeah, I'm still here. Sorry, we hiccuped.
Okay, there we go. Let me see. I'm just reading Chris's comment. Seasons around to play, followed by a week long. Huh.
Yeah. Oh, that's an idea.
Yeah, that's something I don't really hear too much about in terms of like multiplayer. Usually it's either ranked or non-ranked, but having kind of like having like a break from the rank is interesting.
Interesting design, yeah. We'll have to keep an eye on that. See how it works.
For sure. Okay. But back to the question, or back to our topic. So we'll talk a little bit about metagame, metaplay design next. This will probably be the bulk or the final point or final section for the cast. So I would say lengthwise, maybe another. Again, I'm always horrible when it comes to this. Maybe another 20 to 30 minutes if that works for you.
No worries. Okay.
Right.
In general, Richard Garfield, he coined the term metagame when he first invented Magic the Gathering. What I want to talk about is basically what he referred to as the metagame. Mm-hmm. It's since that's kind of been co-opted by another term as the term for something else. Sorry. Mm-hmm. I've come to start calling it the metaplay of a game. Mm-hmm. So the way you engage with a game without actually playing the game itself, if that makes sense.
Yeah, like
for instance. Sorry.
Oh, go ahead. Finish your thought.
For instance, when you're playing Magic the Gathering, instead of actually playing the game, you might be building the deck, or you might be researching winning deck lists, or you might be watching a tournament. All of these things, they're not directly playing the game, but they are still engaging with the game, and basically, this is what I consider metaplay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for I think what a lot of people are like, we kind of when we hear the term like metagame or metaplay in like the grand scheme like today, is oftentimes referred to like the popular trends or what's hot, what's not in a game. Like
Yeah.
what is the best build, what is the worst build, and it has become like a major institution of competitive games or any kind of live service. Anything I think where you have players interacting with each other. Do we have some kind of meta play?
Not quite. I want to make a distinction, linguistic distinction between metagame and metaplay. Metagame is the actual differences in how people are playing the game directly, whereas metaplay is all of this outside stuff, say researching the metagame and so forth.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
I think so. So metagame again is like the trends. That's what's popular. While metaplay is the kind of like what you're doing outside of the game in terms of like thinking about it, building stuff, researching it, that kind of thing.
That's correct. Yes.
And that is always a popular strategy too, Chris. And
yeah, it's a term I've been using for a little while now, but I haven't heard anyone else use it, so I wanted to sort of introduce it to people.
Excuse me. Yeah.
So, yeah, and pretty much. Sorry.
I was just gonna ask you, like, so when you use or when you're thinking about metaplay, like, what would that entail? That would be different from metagame. I guess that would be like an easy way to clarify that for people.
Sorry, could you repeat that? I saw something in chat that was silly.
I guess how would you differentiate between thinking about the metagame of a title versus the metaplay? Like, how would that? What would be the distinction between the two for people watching?
Well, thinking about the metagame is itself metaplay. Engaging with the game without actually playing the game, that is the metaplay itself. Does that answer your question? Sorry.
I think a little, but I guess what would someone be doing? I guess the simplest or another way to put it would be if somebody is saying about the metagame, what would they be thinking about versus what would they be thinking about if we're talking about metaplay?
Thinking about the metagame would be researching cards, frequencies, strategies, which decks are stronger, which heroes are stronger, so on and so forth. The metaplay is, say, watching or literally building your deck.
Okay.
Like I might have a Pokemon card or a deck of cards. Putting this deck together, this isn't a deck, this is bulk. Putting a deck together is metaplay. Crafting that deck into something that is strong, that will win against an opponent, that is based on that will win against an opponent based on current trends. That is metagame.
Okay. All right. So I think Chris's description, I think that sounds like it's a really good qualifier.
A noun and verb difference. Yes. That is. I was just thinking that actually.
Yeah. So with the idea of like meta play, like doing the research, learning these things, that kind of thing, that is something that I think we've really seen. I think like in terms of like the mobile industry itself, like meta play in this respect, I think has really blown up for a lot of mobile and influencers. Like if you look at any live service game, especially when a new one comes out, like I've been playing a few that just came out, you will find just lists and lists of videos of this is the best character. This is what you must re-roll. No, don't re-roll for this one. Re-roll for this one. No, this is what you need to do for your account. These are the 10 things you need to do or you're going to break your account in 20 seconds. And I think to get back to Chris's comment about screw the meta, like I kind of like had that realization this week with some of these videos.
Yeah, I think just watching those videos alone counts as metaplay.
Mm-hmm.
So it's one way of engaging with a game without actually playing the game. So, and there's lots
Mm-hmm.
of different ways to do it. Like you could be studying things, you could be practicing in, like my brother practices in like an aiming program, rather than the main game itself, and lots of other ideas that I actually had written down. Sorry.
Mm-hmm.
So building and painting models in Warhammer, uh, watching speedrunners, and
Mm-hmm.
studying historically significant opening moves in chess, things like that.
Mm-hmm. And as Chris is talking about in chat with like games with like build varieties, trying to figure out, what's the best combination, how do you test this all out? I mean, again, like this is, a lot of my bread and butter with a lot of games, especially again for people who do deck building, creature collectors, party-based RPGs. It's that thrill of not as we said, it's like not so much about you playing the game, it's about you kind of figuring the game out and putting this all together.
That's a good thing. I don't think a lot of indie developers at least think about the metaplay of their games as they're designing them.
Yeah.
Excuse me.
And I guess here's a question then for you, like regarding that point. Do you have any thoughts regarding how do you facilitate metaplay in a game?
It's a very good question. Talking to my players is one way I do it. For kingdom battles, for instance, I talked to them to figure out that they were actually farming gold by attacking weaker players, and by studying that they were actually doing this, I was able to shape the game to lead them towards attacking stronger players instead by actually adding in a capture the flag mechanic.
Mm-hmm.
So
Chat as well. Yeah. And like trying to, I guess, like to get back to the point you just made, like why do you think like there is a lack of metaplay or thinking about metaplay from the independent scene?
from the indie scene, in general, I think it's more a lack of experience with dealing with this particular topic. I think it's something that a lot of indies would greatly benefit from, if they were aware of if their game would benefit from it or not. And for those that would, I don't think they're just that experienced with dealing with it.
So I guess like to follow up on that, then, what do you think is good experience in terms of like metaplay? Like, do you have any like examples of something, other examples that you've done in terms of metaplay or facilitating it?
The big key for to enable to enable indies to realize to develop metaplay is to simply know about it. So that's why I'm trying to spread the knowledge of it. So I'm basically saying, hey, this is a thing that you can develop for.
Mm.
So as for how I did it, or how I'm going to do it, in Egg Trainer, I'm going to have these all of the strategies and stats and everything written up in a wiki. Not an easily editable wiki. I'll curate it, but basically it's going to be a big guide for players, how to approach the game's battling system and such. Sorry, my speech is going on again.
That's alright. And I guess like that actually brings up another question I have for you regarding developers creating the tools. or the software to facilitate metaplay. And what I mean by that is if you look at a lot of RPG based games, especially a lot of mobile games, fans will often create their own software to track things. Build creation is a very popular one. A deck preview. Basically, these are a lot of systems that the developer themselves they never touch. Like they've never worked with these. These are all fan made. And I'm just wondering from your perspective and like your thoughts. Have you given any idea about developers like putting this kind of stuff into their game or creating these tools themselves?
Well, actually, with sorry, I'm going back to Kingdom Battles again. With Kingdom Battles, a couple of my players actually created their own wiki to document how the game works for people, and I was stoked by this. I was quite happy by it because it was the first time anyone's ever actually done it for one of my games, and I thought it was such a good idea. I've actually incorporated it into the egg trainer itself. So at the top of the screen on when you're logged in, you can straight up see the wiki link. I think you can actually access it when you're not logged in as well. So if people find the link, they can explore it. So basically things that I think are a cool idea, I would incorporate them into the game itself.
So, I guess here's a question for you regarding metaplay that I was just thinking about. What are your thoughts on games like Terraria and Minecraft, where a lot of the underlying rules or progression gates are inherently not mentioned in the game? Like, if you're trying to get like advanced stuff in Minecraft, or at least it was when I started playing it, or you're trying to get more things like or like getting through like the different things in Terraria, like you had to look that up on Wiki. Like it was not mentioned anywhere, and I always found it to be very annoying for those kinds of games.
I think that's bad game design, to be honest. Needs to be at least some hint, whether it's implicit or explicit. There needs to be something that tells the player, you need to investigate this closer. There is something here. Keep looking, basically. There's a reason players travel towards enemies when they're moving through games, basically. It's because the enemy placement tells them that there's something in that direction. You know what I mean?
And two, I think Chris is coming from earlier about why games aren't designed for such depth. I think that's another interesting point. I think it's another, especially as a challenge for independent developers who obviously don't have the resources of, well, say a Nintendo or a major studio. But it's that challenge of, if you, let's say you build a game and you only have like 3 skills, it's very easy to figure out, okay, what's the best skill? Versus, say, a game that has multiple skills. But then you still have that issue when it comes to balancing. That, as we all know, especially when we talk about metaplay in this respect, that gamers are really good at data mining and analyzing games. Like, they will figure things out. And to get back, or to bring this into like the greater discussion about the metagame, they will oftentimes figure this stuff out incredibly fast, and then that information spreads. And then it becomes that challenge, as any developer watching this knows, of always trying to stay one step ahead of the meta.
Yeah. Like what I said with my artist actually breeding perfect creatures. She basically figured out that on her own, and it's because she's been breeding perfect creatures. I probably won't be enabling trading, for instance. I think having like 3 different skills. I don't know, design will be simpler in depth. Okay. I like simple design with a lot of depth, which is very difficult to achieve. If you can find some way to get the skills to overlap in interesting ways, I think that's one way to squeeze a lot of depth out of it. Because although there's only 3 skills, there's 6 different ways you can combine them in pairs. You know, I think, or 6 different ways you can combine them. Sorry.
No problem. Yeah, and trying to, I guess, work more with like metaplay and metagame. When you're trying to, I guess, give the players like the tools themselves, or I guess, what are your thoughts on, I guess, how far players can go in terms of metaplay? Like, there are some games, again, that they'll let you completely, test out characters whenever you want, whether you own them or not. Some games, they may only let you try something that you've already bought. This is one of the issues that I had with, like, Dead by Daylight, for instance. That, I guess, where do you think, like, as a developer, you should go in terms of having metaplay or giving players metaplay?
How far I could go? As far as I can, to be honest. The more metaplay, the better. As long as it's not boring. The metaplay has to be fun. But people still hunt shinies, even though the chances of that is like 1 in 8,000 or something, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Metaplay needs to be entertaining or accomplishing or something along those lines, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Does that answer your question? Sorry?
I think so. I guess making it entertaining, I think that's another interesting point, because it is something, I think, for some people, they love this. Again, being able to look at every single skill, every single character, figure things out. But conversely, there are people who, this stuff sounds like watching paint dry. They just want to play the game. They don't want to have to deal with having to research 27 YouTube videos and go to a bunch of websites and figure out your game. And I think this is where we get into that challenge of balancing this with the UI UX of a title. Because if it takes too long to get into the game, or if it requires outside information, you run that risk of the player just feeling completely overwhelmed and just saying, I don't want to deal with this. Like, why do I want to spend 5 hours to learn this game before I can actually play it?
You've got a point. So the question was what? Sorry?
I guess balancing the need for metaplay versus the UI UX of your title.
UI UX. Well, every game, well, not every game, but most games need some sort of onboarding system. That needs to be squeaky clean as far as UI and UX goes. Because without some way to bring in new players, you're not going to have metaplay at all. You're not going to have anyone to actually engage with the metaplay.
Let's see. To Chris's question, Pokemon hasn't felt quite engaging. Yeah, and I think that's the other issue when we start talking about series or long term. If we're talking about a game that's been out for years or a series that's been out for years, how do you keep, I guess, the mystery or the need for metaplay? Because again, if it's a 5-10 game series and we're on game number 8, it's not like the developer, or they probably shouldn't be completely breaking their entire game from game to game. So I guess, do you see metaplay being something that can work in the long term, or do you think there is some kind of soft limit to how much a game can get out of it?
Well, the problem with Pokemon is actually a unique one regarding metaplay, because it's been running for so long. it needs to bring in new players, new young players. So every game needs to be accessible for these kids. So 8, 7, 6, even. They need to be easy enough, but also challenging enough to be fun. What some people forget is that these are kids games. So there are features in there that engage the more adult brains, the more complex strategy stuff. It's like competitive battling and such. But in general, yeah, in the end, we are just playing kids games.
And I think
so. That is another thing. That is a unique problem to Pokemon, but it might not be the only series that has that problem. Another one I can think of is Final Fantasy, for instance. Completely at random. It's not multiplayer, but it does have a unique same sort of problem. But it solves it by basically reinventing the systems every game. You're not going to get the junction system from Final Fantasy VIII anywhere else, basically. Does that make sense?
Yeah. And I think
two different ways of solving it.
Yeah. And I think what you just said about how a lot of these games are aimed for children, so you have to be careful how much you want to go that far. I think that actually raises another design trap we see some developers fall into, is when they say, okay, I want to make the Dark Souls of Pokemon or the Solaris of Pokemon, so we're just going to go all in terms of depth and complexity, and oftentimes these games just become so incomprehensible without the metaplay that maybe only a fraction of the player base will figure it out, and they're going to love it. They're going to love that depth. But again, it becomes that balance of how do you present all this to someone.
Yeah, a vast majority of people won't really be engaging with the metaplay that deeply. At least in general, what you really need to focus on is onboarding people, slowly introducing them to the metaplay, getting them to understand that yes, there is something deeper here that you might be interested in. So it's really a second phase of onboarding, isn't it?
Yep. And some games, again, if you look at something like the Nippon Ichi games, stuff like Disgaea and their whole line, they feature lots and lots of different systems that you are free to engage or not engage with at your leisure. And I think that's another aspect of this. How required is this to play? Because some games, they'll do systems that are just, purely optional. They could break the game if you use them, but you'll need to. While other games, unless you use every single thing the developer gives you, it's just not possible to win.
Yeah, an interesting example of this is actually Final Fantasy Tactics. In my first run through it, I don't think I changed a job class at all, even though that's supposed to be the core of the engagement, core of the metaplay and such.
Yep,
or at least, yeah.
And it's always that challenge, because if you make this stuff required and it becomes hard to understand or requires too much work, you're going to lose people. But you're always going to have those who love that depth, who want to just dig in and create those massive spreadsheets and do a complete, line by line breakdown as what's the best way to play.
As people are a bit masochistic, I think it's a good thing. The trick is there are people who would like all that. They just don't have that second onboarding. That makes sense?
Yeah. And I was just thinking of another question. I just lost it. Yeah, the job classes, that's always a favorite of mine as well. Um, I guess, when it comes to metaplay, do you think that oh, I just remember my question. When it comes to metaplay and metagame, that, as we said, like a big point about this, and this goes back to what we've been talking about in chat, is this idea of solving a mystery. That you're trying to figure this game out inside and out. But one of the things that I've talked about, and I've seen some people also say, is that once you've kind of solved the mystery, inherently you also kind of break the game. That there's no real need to learn anymore. You've seen behind the curtain, you've broke this game, and I guess like that's always been one of the things about why I typically try to avoid doing meta in a lot of titles, because once I start doing it, it becomes hard not to do it. I want to kind of get your thoughts on kind of like spoiling the fun of playing the game in that respect.
Well, going back to Pokemon again, there is a lot of fun in the metaplay itself. So I think they actually design, at least somewhat, for people who reach that point. There are other games that definitely do break once you reach that point. It really comes down to if you have the resources and design capacity to compensate when somebody reaches that point. So, and if you've got that second onboarding, you need somewhere for them to go.
Mm-hmm. Yep. I think I am just about out of questions. We'll get to Chris's question as we get to kind of like the posts or to the wrap up. Anything else regarding metaplay or metagame from you that you would like to discuss?
I'd like to. Well, I'd like to talk about how there needs to be this distinction between metagame and metaplay in general game development, because I think people conflate them too much without really realizing it. So it's more of a niggle of complaint there.
Yeah, and again, it's something that we don't really think about, because most that we've discussed is about the meta game. It's about figuring out these trends. We don't really talk about like how do you figure them out? Like what is the work that goes into it?
Sorry, I missed that. I saw chat go.
I was just saying about we haven't, like as you said, it's not something that we think about in terms of the work, or the kind of work that goes into mastering these games or figuring all this stuff out.
The amount of work. It's essentially a second game within the first one. It makes me think of Fez for some reason. You've got basically Fez, the game, and then you've got Fez the puzzle, where you have to find all the anti-cubes and the red secret cubes, and decipher all the text and such. I remember when I first found the Rosetta Stone in that game, I was like, "Oh, that's cute," and it didn't click to me what it was. I think Phil Fish basically designed two separate games layered over one another. So,
and when you put it like that, like Daniel Mullins will definitely be a huge example of this with Inscription, Pony Island. Like he requires, like there are like files in one game that you can put into another game, which will then unlock a true ending, kind of thing.
Yeah, that is crazy. That's a whole other level of I don't know how he does it. I'm envious.
To Chris's question, what games would you say have influenced you most as a designer, besides Pokemon?
Final Fantasy, particularly Final Fantasy VIII. That was my intro to the series, and it feels like feels like comfort food. I can always go back to it, you know. particularly Pokemon Yellow. That was my first one. That was when I was very young. What else? The Legend of Zelda, definitely. Particularly Ocarina of Time. That the way the puzzle dungeons worked. That always I always loved those.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, pretty much everything Nintendo's made. Like those are the games that have stuck with me.
All right.
As for the other question, long-term support for Egg Trainer. I actually started working on Egg Trainer as an entry for a game jam called Decade Jam. So it runs for a whole 10 years. Classically trained, thank you. And basically, I'm going to be supporting it for that whole period, at least. That's the plan, at least. Once it's finished, I don't know what I'm going to do, but I'm going to keep it live for as long as I can. And here's the bots. Hello.
Oh, of course. We almost got through without any bots, but let's
well.
get rid of that right there.
I was feeling left out.
And I guess with Egg Trainer, I know we talked about the Game Jam game, the I think it was Waterlogged earlier. Are you working on any other projects at the time?
Yes, I've over the last during May, I believe, I worked on a tabletop skirmish war game called Fiends, Foils, and Fallen. I believe the link is in the description. If you put it there, yep. It's totally free, but you probably have to sign up for Wargame Vault, I think. So if you've got an account there or one of their sister sites, but otherwise it's totally free, and it's basically you have little miniatures of demons that you make yourself, and you basically move them around, and there are different scenarios based on sorry, I'm not very good at describing it. Little scenarios for you to complete. And it's not a very big game, but I'm happy with it because I was able to develop it without a computer, basically.
All right. Well, I think with that, I think just about a question other than kind of going to our wrap up. Anything else that you want to discuss?
If you're for anyone who wants to buy Candy Raid, do it on the Switch because that's the best version, I think.
All right. And again, there are links to all the games down below for those of you watching this recorded as well, as my voice dies along the way.
Okay.
All right, I think we'll wrap things up here for tonight. So, I guess to end things on, besides the games we mentioned, anywhere else you would like to plug, social media, projects, etc.?
I've got a Twitter, KR Game Studios. I've got a Facebook as well. I don't really update it very often, sorry. I've also got the 4 games that I linked to, including this one, which we didn't really talk about. And yeah, I'm Ratstail91 on Discord. Feel free to say hi anytime, or if you're interested in like the technology behind Egg Trainer, I could keep going for hours because I just love it. I wrote the engine from the ground up. I'm so proud of it.
All right. So with that, and as like there's a lawnmower beginning outside, like perfect timing, let us wrap things up for our cast. Kayne, it's been a pleasure chatting. We finally got everything aligned. I know you probably need to get some sleep, so I won't keep you too much longer. So
okay, thank you very much.
not a problem. So again, there'll be links to everything down below for everyone watching, so be sure to check them out. And again, I'm sure we'll be chatting on the Discord as well.
Yeah, I look forward to chatting with anyone who's interested.
I guess one other question regarding Egg Trainer. As you said, that it's available, I guess, in beta right now. Do you have an estimated idea for when, like, it will be like public or when we'll go like, officially live?
You can sign up for it now. You can collect eggs and train the creatures and everything right now. But it's going to officially finish before the end of the year, hopefully. That's my goal.
All right, sounds good. So, while the lawnmower gets increasingly louder, we'll end things here. So, thank you everybody for tuning in. As always, do the liking, subscribing, and commenting of the YouTube algorithm. Check out all the links down below. You'll find links on my Patreon, Discord, and Twitter. You'll find stuff up there. Check out the books and all that. And if you are a developer working on a project or just want to come on and talk game dev, please get in touch. I'm always looking for new guests. Come back for daily discussions on game design here and on game wisdom, where some of the art and science of games. And Kayne, best of luck with Egg Trainer, and again, I'm sure we'll be chatting more in the future.
Thanks very much. I'm looking forward to it.
All right, everyone, have a great rest of your evening, and come back for daily discussions on game design here and on game wisdom, where some of the art and science of games. Have a great evening, everybody, and see you next time.